The Galactic Research Institute prided itself on three things: its prestigious history of groundbreaking discoveries, its state-of-the-art facilities, and its absolute inability to learn from past mistakes. This last point became particularly relevant during the infamous ant incident of 2847. Dr. Crick's Noodle sat in the back of the conference room, wondering if she was the only scientist in the entire facility with more than 2 functioning brain cells. The hollow presentation floating above the center table showed various creatures from Earth, each more terrifying than the last. Currently displayed was a creature that, according to the data, could lift 50 times its own body weight and survive being microwaved. As you can see, Dr. Porkins enthusiastically waved his tentacles at the image. These Earth creatures, called ants, demonstrate remarkable capabilities. They form complex social structures, build elaborate underground cities, and possess strength that, scaled up, would be unmatched in our current military forces. Dr. Noodle raised one of her eyebrows. She had specifically evolved an extra set just for moments like these. Are we really considering this again? Need I remind everyone about the Earth tardigrade incident of 2845? That was completely different, Dr. Porkins dismissed with a wave of his third tentacle. Nobody could have predicted that giving water bears the ability to breathe fire would end badly. I did. I predicted it. I wrote a 40-page report titled "Why This Will End Badly," a comprehensive analysis. The Institute's director, a being composed entirely of floating geometric shapes arranged in a vaguely humanoid form, drifted forward. Dr. Noodle, while we appreciate your consistent dedication to pointing out potential catastrophes, the galactic military has been quite insistent about developing new super soldiers, and after the jellyfish cavalry project failed, because jellyfish can't ride horses, Dr. Noodle muttered. We need a new direction. These ants show remarkable potential. Dr. Porkins, please continue. Dr. Porkins gleefully manipulated the holographic display showing various ant species. We've identified several promising candidates: the bullet ant with its powerful sting, the army ant with its coordinated hunting strategies, the carpenter ant with its ability to literally chew through buildings. Imagine combining these traits with our current genetic enhancement technologies. Dr. Noodle watched as her colleagues nodded enthusiastically, their various appendages, tentacles, and probability clouds bobbing in agreement. She did some quick calculations in her head. If she filed for a transfer now, she could be halfway across the galaxy before they actually started the experiment. And the best part, Dr. Porkins continued, his excitement causing him to briefly lose control of his shape-shifting abilities, Earth is a Class C protected planet. The natives are too busy arguing about whether their planet is flat to notice a small specimen collection mission. The director's geometric forms rearranged themselves into what passed for a thoughtful expression. Very well, I'm approving this project. Dr. Porkins will lead the research team. And Dr. Noodle. Yes, she asked, already knowing what was coming. You'll be his assistant. Someone needs to file the inevitable disaster reports, and you have such experience with the forms. As her colleagues filed out of the conference room, already discussing which parts of ant biology they wanted to enhance first, Dr. Noodle began drafting her resignation letter. She got as far as, "Dear Director, I quit because I'm surrounded by idiots," before deleting it. Someone had to be here to say, "I told you so," when it all went wrong. Besides, the disaster report forms really did need proper formatting. The stealth ship Inconspicuous hovered above Earth, its cloaking technology rendering it completely invisible to human detection systems. Unfortunately, it was also currently visible to human eyes, as Dr. Porkins had installed the cloaking device upside down. "Don't worry," he assured the crew as they floated above a suburban neighborhood in broad daylight. "According to my research, humans will assume we're either a weather balloon or swamp gas. They're remarkably creative at explaining away the obvious." Dr. Noodle checked their position on the navigation system. "We're directly above something called Pete's Pest Control. Perhaps we should find a less professionally observed location?" "Nonsense, this is perfect. Based on the name, this must be where they keep all the ants. Before Dr. Noodle could explain the fundamental flaw in this logic, Dr. Porkins had already activated the specimen collection beam. The green light shot down from their ship directly into the parking lot where a human was loading equipment into a truck. Pete Martinez was having a perfectly normal day until he and his ant-killing chemicals were suddenly lifted into the air by a green beam of light. He maintained his professional composure for approximately 2.3 seconds before beginning to scream. "Fascinating," Dr. Porkins observed through the view screen. "The human seems to be performing some sort of greeting ritual." "That's not a greeting ritual," Dr. Noodle sighed, watching as Pete flailed in the containment field. "That's what we in the xenobiology field call panic." "Oh," Dr. Porkins seemed disappointed. "Should we put it back?" Yes, we should definitely put the screaming human back. But we haven't even collected any ants yet. There are literally billions of ants on this planet. We can find some that aren't in the immediate vicinity of a pest control professional." After returning a very confused Pete to the ground, and accidentally taking his truck's entire supply of ant poison with them, they moved on to their next target, a public park. Dr. Noodle had to admit, this was a more logical location for ant collection. She had even started to feel slightly optimistic about the mission. That optimism lasted exactly 4 minutes. "Dr. Porkins," she said, watching the collection beam's contents materialize in their specimen containment unit. "That's a picnic basket." "Yes, brilliant, isn't it? I noticed the ants were very attracted to it. This way we get the ants and their natural habitat." Dr. Noodle stared at the red and white checkered basket, complete with half-eaten sandwiches and a family-sized bag of potato chips. Their natural habitat is underground colonies, not Betty's family picnic for 6. Details. Now watch this. I've located a promising specimen source." The beam activated again, this time targeting what appeared to be a massive anthill. Dr. Noodle had to admit this was finally a sensible decision, until she saw the sign next to it. "Warning, fire ant colony, do not disturb. Contact Pete's pest control for removal." "Dr. Porkins," she started. "Success," he declared as the containment unit filled with very angry, very confused fire ants. "And look, they're already combat ready. This project is going perfectly." Dr. Noodle watched as the fire ants began organizing themselves in the containment unit, forming what appeared to be tactical units. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were plotting something. But that was ridiculous. They were just ants, regular, ordinary earth ants, who were now eyeing the potato chips with unsettling intensity. "Mission accomplished," Dr. Porkins announced. "Let's get these specimens back to the lab. The genetic enhancement can begin immediately." As they ascended through Earth's atmosphere, Dr. Noodle began filling out Form X 1123B. Preliminary report for inevitably catastrophic research projects. She made sure to note the unexpected acquisition of human snack foods in the additional risk factors section. Something told her this detail would become important later. Behind her, in the specimen containment unit, the fire ants had already figured out how to open the bag of chips. The initial phase of Project Formicide, which Dr. Noodle had suggested naming Project This Is Definitely Going to End Badly, showed promising results. Dr. Porkins's genetic modifications were successfully creating larger, stronger ants with enhanced capabilities. The test subjects could now bench press small vehicles and had developed an uncanny ability to organize themselves into complex military formations. "Look at this," Dr. Porkins excitedly gestured at test subject 47, who was currently arranging tiny weights into a crude replica of the Galactic Institute's logo. "They're displaying unprecedented levels of intelligence and coordination." "Yes," Dr. Noodle agreed, watching as another group of test subjects constructed what appeared to be a miniature catapult. "That's exactly what concerns me." But her concerns were dismissed as the project continued to exceed expectations. The enhanced ants grew to roughly the size of small dogs, developed reinforced exoskeletons that could deflect standard energy weapons, and demonstrated remarkable problem-solving abilities. Everything was going perfectly. Then someone left the break room door open. "Dr. Porkins," Dr. Noodle said, reviewing the security footage, "please explain why test groups A through F are raiding the facility's sugar supply." "Oh, that?" He waved a tentacle dismissively. "Just a minor side effect. The genetic modifications seem to have increased their natural attraction to sugar. Nothing to worry about." "Nothing to worry about," she repeated slowly, watching as the footage showed the ants working together to operate the coffee machine. "The militarized insects we created have developed an advanced sugar addiction, and that's nothing to worry about." "Precisely. Although we may need to requisition more sugar packets, and possibly some donuts. They've developed quite sophisticated palates." Before Dr. Noodle could point out the many problems with this situation, the facility's alarm system activated. Red lights began flashing as an automated voice announced, "Warning, containment breach in Laboratory 7. Warning, unauthorized access to cafeteria detected. Warning, vending machine integrity compromised." They rushed to the security monitoring station where multiple screens showed chaos unfolding throughout the facility. The enhanced ants had somehow coordinated a facility-wide breakout, using their newly developed abilities in terrifyingly creative ways. "Fascinating," Dr. Porkins observed as they watched Test Group C forming a living ladder to reach the ceiling vents. "They've developed advanced tactical capabilities." "They're heading for the main food storage facility," Dr. Noodle pointed out. "This isn't tactical advancement. This is a snack heist." Further analysis revealed that exposure to earth sugar had catalyzed an unexpected reaction in the modified ant DNA, accelerating their evolution in ways nobody had predicted. Nobody except Dr. Noodle, who had actually mentioned this possibility in her 73rd memo titled, "Reasons this project should be terminated immediately." The situation deteriorated rapidly. The ants had not only developed enhanced physical capabilities, but had also formed a complex hive mind focused entirely on acquiring and hoarding snack foods. They established control over the facility's break room, setting up an elaborate defense system made entirely of stolen office supplies. "Dr. Porkins," Dr. Noodle said, watching as a squad of ants used a stolen ID card to access the executive lounge, "I believe now might be a good time to implement Emergency Protocol 17. "You mean the one about admitting we made a terrible mistake and calling for help?" "That's the one. Nonsense, we just need to adjust their diet. Perhaps if we offer them sugar-free alternatives." The emergency lights flashed again. "Warning, test subjects have accessed the facility's computer network. Warning, bulk order of assorted candies detected. Warning, Institute credit card successfully charged." Dr. Noodle started filling out Form X 1123C, detailed documentation of exactly how everything went wrong as previously predicted. She made sure to check the box marked "Threat Level, Sugar-Fueled Chaos." In the distance they could hear the distinct sound of hundreds of tiny feet marching in formation, accompanied by what seemed to be a choreographed raid on the facility's secret chocolate stash. "Well," Dr. Porkins said, watching as their creations systematically commandeered every vending machine in the building, "at least they're organized." "That's not the point," Dr. Noodle exploded. "We've created an army of super-intelligent, tactically advanced ants, with an insatiable sweet tooth and apparent knowledge of online shopping. This is literally the worst possible outcome." "Not technically true," Dr. Porkins replied. "They could have developed a taste for spicy foods instead. Imagine the chaos if they were addicted to hot sauce." As if on cue, Test Group D discovered the facility's supply of caffeinated energy drinks. Things were about to get much worse. The emergency containment meeting was not going well, partly because half the committee members were trapped in their offices by strategic ant blockades, and partly because the ants had hijacked the video conference system to stream cooking shows. As you can see, Dr. Noodle addressed the floating heads on the screen, occasionally having to pause as the Great Galactic Bake-Off interrupted the feed. "The situation has evolved beyond our initial containment parameters." Evolved is an understatement. The director's geometric shapes rearranged themselves anxiously. According to these reports, they've developed their own economic system based on trading rare candy flavors. And they've started a newsletter, added Dr. Porkins, who still somehow remained optimistic. You have to admire their organizational skills. A security officer's hologram flickered to life. They've taken over the facility's lower levels. They're using the maintenance robots to build what appears to be a candy factory. Dr. Noodle pulled up the security feeds. Sure enough, the ants had repurposed the laboratory's automated assembly lines to create an elaborate confectionery production facility. The sight of dozens of dog-sized ants wearing tiny hairnets would have been adorable if it wasn't so terrifying. But where did they get the recipes? Someone asked. They have Wi-Fi access, Dr. Noodle explained wearily. They've been watching YouTube tutorials. The situation had indeed spiraled far beyond their worst projections, except for Dr. Noodles, who had actually included potential establishment of ant-run candy manufacturing in her risk assessment, though she'd meant it as a joke. The ants were reproducing at an alarming rate, passing on their enhanced abilities and apparently their refined palates to each new generation. They had developed specialized roles within their society. Scout teams that located new snack sources, engineering squads that designed better food storage systems, and a disturbingly effective marketing department. They've started a social media presence, reported the head of IT security. Their TikTok about artisanal honey production has gone viral. That's not the worst part, Dr. Noodle added. Show them the shipping manifesto. The display screen filled with a long list of incoming deliveries. The ants had apparently figured out how to use the Institute's procurement system to order bulk ingredients for their confectionery operation. More worryingly, they'd started franchising. They've opened 3 satellite facilities, the security chief explained, and they're planning an IPO. Dr. Porkins brightened. Well, at least they're showing excellent business acumen. They're building an empire, Dr. Noodle interrupted. An empire based on sugar and corporate expansion. This isn't a military experiment anymore. It's a hostile takeover of the galactic snack industry. As if to emphasize her point, the screen suddenly switched to a professionally produced advertisement for Antworks Artisanal Sweets for the Discriminating Invertebrate. The director's shape swirled in distress. How are they this good at marketing? They've been studying corporate success stories, Dr. Noodle explained. Also, they hired a consulting firm. Another alarm blared through the facility. Warning. Hostile merger attempt detected. Warning. Corporate letterhead being printed without authorization. Warning. Business casual dress code being implemented. Dr. Noodle began filling out Form X 1123D. Documentation of experimental subjects exceeding worst-case scenarios in innovative ways. She had to create a new checkbox for unauthorized business activities. Perhaps, suggested Dr. Porkins, watching as a group of ants in tiny suits marched past with spreadsheets, we should have focused less on enhancing their organizational capabilities. You think? Dr. Noodle replied just as another alert announced the ants had scheduled a shareholders' meeting. In the background, they could hear the distinct sound of tiny printers producing what would later turn out to be a 100-page business plan for global snack domination. The director's geometric forms briefly collapsed into a dejected cube. Dr. Noodle, please tell me you have a solution. Actually, she said, pulling up an encrypted file, I took the liberty of contacting some experts who deal with this sort of thing all the time. The military? No, she replied, displaying an image of a very familiar pest control truck. Someone with much more relevant experience. Pete Martinez was having a strange week. First, he'd been abducted by aliens while loading his truck. Then he'd received an urgent interstellar message marked Pest Control Emergency, Infinity Level Clearance. Now he was standing in the loading bay of the Galactic Research Institute, staring at a PowerPoint presentation being given by a dog-sized ant wearing reading glasses. I have to admit, he said to Dr. Noodle, this is definitely not covered in the standard certification course. Understandable, she replied. watching as the ant clicked through slides showing projected sugar consumption metrics. Though I must say their presentation skills are impressive. The situation had reached critical mass. The ants, having exhausted the facility's snack supplies and maximized their production capacity, had set their compound eyes on a bigger target: the Great Galactic Candy Repository, the largest confectionery storage facility in 3 solar systems. "Their plan is actually quite brilliant," Dr. Porkins commented, reviewing the ants' detailed 3D holographic heist model. "The synchronized infiltration teams, the override of the security systems using corrupted maintenance protocols, the staged distractions involving flash mobs at all emergency response centers." "Not helping, Dr. Porkins." Pete scratched his head. "Well, normally I'd suggest a standard perimeter treatment, but something tells me these folks have evolved beyond basic ant traps." "They're using them as door stops," Dr. Noodle confirmed, "and they've developed a taste for the poison. They say it adds a tangy kick to their energy drinks." The ants had already begun their operation. Phase 1 involved a sophisticated cyber attack that replaced all shipping manifests with orders for various sweets. Phase 2 was a carefully orchestrated series of sugar-related diversions across the galaxy, including a suspiciously timed shortage of birthday cake on 3 major planets. "Warning," announced the facility's AI, which now spoke with an inexplicable British accent thanks to the ants' modifications. "Phase 3 has commenced. Would anyone care for some tea and biscuits while we watch the show?" On the security feeds, they could see the main force of ants beginning their assault on the candy repository. They moved with military precision, each squad equipped with tiny tactical gear and what appeared to be repurposed kitchen utensils as weapons. "You have to appreciate their commitment to food-grade equipment," Dr. Porkins noted. Again, not helping. Pete watched as the ants expertly breached the repository's outer defenses, using a combination of advanced technology and what looked suspiciously like cookie crumbs to create a trail past the security sensors. "I think I might have an idea," he said slowly, "but you're not going to like it." At this point, Dr. Noodle replied, watching as the ants began constructing an elaborate pulley system to airlift entire crates of chocolate bars. "I'm open to anything." Pete opened his truck and pulled out his most powerful weapon, something he'd sworn never to use except in the most dire circumstances: the complete collection of Earth's most annoying commercial jingles. These ants have developed advanced intelligence, right? Which means they've also developed the ability to get songs stuck in their heads. Dr. Noodle's eyes widened. "Psychological warfare through merchandising earworms? That's brilliantly evil." "I prefer to think of it as pest control through creative means," Pete grinned, setting up his industrial-strength speakers. As the first notes of the Cookie Crunch Captain's Symphony in B minor began to play, the effect on the ants was immediate and devastating. Their precise military formations dissolved into chaos as they tried desperately to escape the maddeningly catchy tunes. "It's working," Dr. Porkins exclaimed, "though I must say this Baby Shark song is quite catchy." "Don't!" Dr. Noodle and Pete shouted simultaneously. But the ants weren't defeated yet. Their marketing department quickly began working on a counter-campaign, trying to drown out the jingles with their own corporate muzak. The battle of the bands that followed would later be documented in the Institute's archives as the Great Acoustic Warfare of Corridor B. As Pete prepared to deploy his ultimate weapon, the complete anthology of ice cream truck songs, Dr. Noodle couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The galaxy's most advanced military experiment was about to be defeated by the very species it was derived from using the power of annoying Earth music. She began filling out Form X 1123E, Creative Solutions to Previously Unprecedented Problems. Under Method of Resolution, she simply wrote, "Never underestimate human marketing departments." The official report on the resolution of Project Formicidae, now officially renamed the Great Ant Fiasco in all Institute documentation, was surprisingly brief. This was mainly because most of the original paperwork had been repurposed by the ants to create origami candy wrappers during their final stand. The combination of Earth's most annoying commercial jingles and Pete's expert deployment of industrial-grade sugar-free sweetener had finally brought the ant empire to its knees. The fact that the sweetener packets were labelled now with improved taste had apparently dealt a crushing blow to their morale. "I have to say," Pete commented as they watched the defeated ants being led into specially designed containment units, each ant carrying a tiny white flag made from recycled memo papers. "This is definitely going in my monthly report, though I'm not sure how to file it under our standard service categories." The director's geometric shapes had assembled into something resembling a relieved sigh. "The Galactic Council has already drafted new regulations regarding genetic experiments with Earth species. From now on, all research proposals must first be approved by a committee of actual Earth pest control professionals." "And," Dr. Noodle added with considerable satisfaction, "they've created a new department." She proudly displayed her new office door sign, Department of Preventing Obviously Bad Ideas, Director Dr. Noodle. The cleanup operation took several weeks. The ants' corporate infrastructure had to be carefully dismantled, their social media accounts deactivated, and their surprisingly profitable candy business sold off to a legitimate confectionery corporation. Their marketing team was offered jobs in advertising, which they politely declined via a professionally written letter citing creative differences and a desire to pursue less jingle vulnerable opportunities. Dr. Porkins, in a stunning display of missing the point entirely, had already begun drafting proposals for new research projects. "What if we tried it with bees instead?" he suggested during the final debriefing. "They already have a complex social structure and produce their own snacks." The sound of Dr. Noodle's multiple sets of eyes rolling was audible from 3 corridors away. Pete's Pest Control Service was awarded a generous contract as the Institute's official Earth species consultant, though Pete insisted on adding a no alien abductions clause to the agreement. He also provided them with a comprehensive guide titled "Why You Shouldn't Mess with Earth Bugs," a professional opinion. The contained ants were eventually relocated to a secure facility where they were allowed to continue their confectionery experiments under strict supervision. Their quarterly revenue reports were consistently impressive, though all sugar shipments were carefully monitored. As for the Institute, several changes were implemented. All vending machines now required biometric authentication. The cafeteria stopped serving energy drinks. A new section was added to the employee handbook, "Why We Don't Enhance Earth Insects, 101 Reasons." Dr. Noodle's memo template, "I Told You So," Form 1A, became standard issue. Dr. Noodle's final report included a personal note. In conclusion, while Project Formicidae failed to produce viable military applications, it did succeed in proving 3 universal constants. 1. Never underestimate Earth species. 2. Sugar is a more powerful motivator than military training. And 3. Always listen to the person filling out the disaster prediction paperwork. She filed this along with Form X1123F, final documentation of completely preventable catastrophe, making sure to check the box marked "Told You So" multiple times. As she left the office that evening, she could have sworn she heard a tiny humming sound from the vicinity of the supposedly deactivated candy production line. She decided some mysteries were better left uninvestigated. Besides, she had a more pressing concern. Dr. Porkins had just submitted a new proposal titled "Understanding Earth Squirrel Psychology, a Military Perspective." She began drafting her response before she even reached her office.